I swear I only went into RJ's office to grab a form. It was a Thursday afternoon, the kind of dull grey day that makes the fluorescent lights in the office feel extra harsh. I'd just come back from lunch, juggling my Tupperware, my phone, and a stack of invoices I kept forgetting to process. The accounting software was open on my screen, blinking accusingly, and I remembered that Human Resources had emailed, again, about my missing benefits update. "Sign it, or lose your dental," the subject line had said. So I got up with a sigh, slid my shoes back on, and headed down the hallway toward the corner office with the big window and the ridiculous ficus tree that Maggie always teased RJ about. RJ wasn't at his desk. His office door was mostly closed, just barely cracked, maybe an inch, but that wasn't unusual. He was always pacing during calls, or in one of the conference rooms trying to sell our services with what he called charismatic aggression. I knocked anyway, knuckles against the wood. "Hey RJ, you in here?" No answer. I pushed the door open, just enough to lean my head in. His desk was empty, chair pushed back, laptop open with a spreadsheet glowing on the screen. His blazer was slung over the back of the chair, and the form I needed was probably in the tray where he dumped all the paperwork I labeled and organized for him. I hesitated. It felt weird to go into your best friend's husband's office when he wasn't there. But I also worked for him, and he'd told me more than once, "Jack, just go in and grab whatever you need. You basically run this place anyway." So I told myself it was fine, walked in quietly, and went straight behind his desk to dig through the tray. That's when I saw them. Through the floor-to-ceiling window that looked out onto the small balcony, past the blinds he always forgot to close, there they were. RJ and a man I'd never seen before. They were kissing. Not just a quick peck, not some casual joking shoulder bump. They were pressed close together, like gravity was pulling them inward. RJ's hands were cupping the back of the guy's head, fingers threaded into his hair. The other man's hands were on RJ's waist, sliding up his back as he leaned in. It was slow, intimate, familiar. My body went cold so fast it felt like I'd swallowed ice. I froze, half bent over his desk, my hand buried in a pile of paperwork, eyes locked on that window like I was watching someone else's life through a TV screen. RJ shifted, his profile turning slightly, and I caught the expression on his face, soft, unguarded, happy. I looked away so hard my neck hurt. "Oh my God," I whispered, though no one could hear me. It felt like I'd walked in on something sacred and private. It also felt like I'd just watched my best friend's marriage explode in front of me. My heart was slamming. I grabbed the first stack of papers my fingers touched. I didn't even check if the form I needed was in there, and backed out of the office, closing the door as quietly as I could. My hands were shaking so badly, the metal handle clicked louder than I wanted. In my head, a frantic loop was already starting. What did I just see? What does this mean? What do I do? Back at my desk, the office looked exactly the same. Muted hum of conversation, printer whining in the corner, someone laughing near the break room. My monitor had gone to sleep, reflecting my wide eyes back at me. I sat down and tried to breathe, fingers pressed to my lips like I could shove the image back into my skull. RJ is kissing a man, passionately. RJ is my boss. RJ is my best friend's husband. Maggie, who sends me memes at 11 p.m., who gave me a place to stay after my last breakup, who dragged me out for margaritas when I thought my life was over. My stomach turned. I suddenly felt like I'd eaten something rotten. All afternoon I was useless. I clicked through emails without reading them, switched between spreadsheets like I was pretending to work in a movie about an office. Every time I glanced up, my eyes would flick toward his door. By the time I saw RJ again, he was alone, back at his desk, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. He looked exactly the same as always, like nothing was different. He smiled when I walked in to finally get the actual form I needed. "Hey, Jack. You busy saving me from my own chaos again?" His voice was warm and casual, and it made my skin prickle. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound normal. "Something like that." I kept my eyes on the paperwork, terrified he'd see something in my expression, that he'd somehow know what I'd seen. For the rest of the day, I was caught between wanting to stare at him constantly and wanting to avoid him completely. Every time he laughed, every time he walked past my desk, every time I heard him on the phone talking to Maggie, "Yes, baby, I'll be home in an hour," my chest tightened. On the drive home, my car felt too small. The radio was too loud even when it was off, like the silence had a noise to it. I kept replaying the moment on the balcony, trying to rationalize it into something that made sense. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe it was a cousin. Maybe they were rehearsing a play. I laughed out loud at that one, a short, humorless sound in the empty car. It was not a misunderstanding. That night, I lay on my couch with the TV on some show I wasn't watching. My phone rested on my chest. I must have opened Maggie's contact 10 times, my thumb hovering over the call button. What would I even say? "Hey, so, funny story. I think your husband is cheating on you and also maybe bi." Every script I came up with sounded wrong. Cruel. Messy. Like I was about to drop a bomb into her life and then stand there helpless as everything burned. I kept thinking about how she looked at him. The way she'd once told me, in that half-joking, half-serious tone. If RJ ever did anything shady, I'd know. We're way too honest with each other. Painfully honest. Apparently not honest enough, I thought, and immediately felt mean for even thinking it. Maybe he's figuring it out. Maybe he's ashamed. Maybe he doesn't know how to tell her. My brain tried hard to make a sympathetic narrative for him, but the image of them kissing kept intruding. Not nervous, not guilty. Happy, familiar. And beneath all the swirling questions was this stubborn, growing anger. Not just at the cheating, that word was starting to feel like a physical object, but at the position it put me in. I loved them. Both of them. They were my family. Now I was holding this secret that felt like a live wire. The days that followed were somehow both a blur and painfully slow. I avoided being alone with RJ as much as possible, which was difficult when he technically signed my paychecks. Every time he asked me a simple question, "Did you send that proposal? Can you move the Friday meeting?" I heard another quieter question underneath it. "Did you see? Do you know?" Maggie texted like normal. Complaints about her commute, a picture of the weird salad she'd packed for lunch, a random TikTok of a dog trying to catch bubbles. I answered, just as casually, but my fingers hovered over the keyboard, wanting to type, "Mag, I need to talk to you about something." I thought maybe I should confront RJ first. That seemed fair, right? Give him a chance to explain, to tell me it was complicated, that there was context I didn't understand. But then what? Ask him, "Are you cheating on my best friend?" And hope he shrugged and said, "Nah, it's fine." Hope he had a magic explanation that made the whole thing dissolve? Every path in my head felt like a maze. But the one thing that kept coming back, the thing I couldn't shake no matter how much I tried to think my way out of it, was simple. If this were happening to me, I'd want to know. And not from someone months later. Not after it had become a story everyone else had moved on from. By Sunday night, I wasn't sleeping. I stared at the ceiling until dawn smudged the edges of my bedroom window. My chest felt tight, my stomach twisted, like my body itself was telling me, "Do something." By Monday afternoon, I cracked. I was sitting in my parked car in the office lot after work, keys still in the ignition, hand wrapped around my phone. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I scrolled to Maggie's name, and before I could talk myself out of it, I hit call. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey, Jack." Her voice was bright, familiar. "What's up?" I swallowed. "Hey, are you home?" "Yeah, why?" "I need to tell you something." My voice shook on the last word. "It's about RJ." There was a pause. Not long, but enough that I heard it. The shift in her breathing. "Okay," she said slowly. "You're scaring me." "I'm sorry, I didn't want to text this." "Did something happen at work?" I closed my eyes, inhaled, and said the words that had been gnawing at me for days. "I saw him with someone last week," I said. "In his office. On the balcony. It was a guy, and they were kissing. Really kissing. I didn't mean to see them. I was just getting a form, and—" I realized I was babbling. My throat felt tight, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. "I didn't know who else to tell. I didn't know if I should confront him first, and I feel like I'm betraying you and—" "Stop," Maggie said, firmly but not unkind. "Stop, okay? Just breathe." I gulped in air like I'd been underwater. There was another pause, the kind where you can practically hear someone thinking on the other end. Then she said very clearly, "Come over right now and bring 2 bottles of wine." I blinked. "What?" "You heard me. 2 bottles. Red. I'm not playing. Get over here." Then she hung up. I stared at my phone, confused. That was not the reaction I'd expected. No sobbing, no screaming, no how could he? Just, "Come over. Bring wine." My brain, which had been in crisis mode for days, stumbled. Is she in shock? Is this how she copes? But I'd started this. I wasn't going to back out because the script didn't match what I'd imagined. So I drove to the liquor store, grabbed 2 bottles of Cabernet with shaking hands, and headed to their house, my chest buzzing with dread. The sun was setting by the time I pulled into their driveway, painting the houses in that soft gold that normally makes everything look gentle. Tonight it just made my hands look too pale on the steering wheel. Maggie was already at the door when I walked up, barefoot in an oversized t-shirt and leggings, her hair in a messy bun. She took one look at my face and opened her arms. "Come here," she said. I hugged her, bottles clinking between us, and the tears I'd been holding back finally spilled over. "I'm so sorry," I said into her shoulder. "I didn't know how to tell you. I've been going crazy all week. I thought—" She pulled back, hands on my shoulders, and gave me this strange, gentle smile. Not happy, exactly, but not broken. "Let's go inside," she said. "We're going to talk. A lot." We settled at the kitchen table, the same one I'd sat at 100 times, laughing over takeout and game nights. She poured generous glasses of wine, slid one to me, and took a long sip of hers before setting it down. "Okay," she said. "Tell me exactly what you saw." I did. I described the office, the half-open door, the balcony, the way they were holding each other. I told her how I'd felt. Shock, guilt, anger, all of it. I told her how I'd agonized over whether to talk to him first or her. The whole time, she listened. Really listened. No interruptions, no defenses. Her face was thoughtful, not surprised. When I was done, the room fell quiet, except for the hum of the fridge. My fingers were tight around the stem of my wineglass, knuckles white. "Maggie," I said, my voice small. "I think RJ might be into guys, and I'm terrified I just blew up your marriage." She exhaled slowly, then did the last thing I expected. She laughed. Not a mocking laugh, not mean or dismissive, more like a soft, incredulous sound. "Oh, Jack," she said, smiling with this complicated tenderness. "You didn't blow up anything." I stared at her. "I don't understand." She took another sip of wine, set the glass down carefully, and folded her hands on the table. "You're right about one thing," she said. "RJ is into guys, and girls. He's bisexual. He has been since, forever." My brain did a short circuit. "What?" "He's bi," she repeated. "He's always been really clear about that. He dated guys all through college, fell in love with a couple of them. Same with women. When we started dating, he told me everything." I blinked at her, trying to reconcile the earnest, straightforward way she said it with the secretive image in my head. "He told you? From the beginning?" She nodded. "Yeah, I mean, not on the first date. But early. He was tired of hiding that part of himself." And I didn't want to be with someone who had to lock away pieces of who they are to be with me. I shook my head slowly. So, you know about this guy? Her smile shifted, softening. Is he about my height? Dark hair? Kind of curly? Cute little scar on his chin? I remembered the balcony scene. The guy's hair, the way it curled slightly at the nape of his neck, the angle of his jaw. Yeah, I said. That sounds like him. His name's Daniel, she said. He and RJ have been together for, I don't know, 3 years now. I met him around then. My mouth dropped open. You've met him? Mm-hmm. He came over for dinner the first time and I was so nervous I almost burned the pasta. This was too much. The floor didn't feel stable. Maggie, I thought he was cheating on you. I know, she said gently. Of course you did. You had no context. You saw one moment through a window and your brain did the math it knows how to do. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. But no, he's not cheating on me. Daniel's part of our lives. I stared at her, the words slow to land. He's your… what? Like your boyfriend too? She shook her head, smiling at my floundering. No, he's RJ's partner. I'm RJ's partner. We're all close, but in different ways. It's complicated to explain, but not as dramatic as it sounds. RJ knew from pretty young that he wasn't satisfied pretending he was only attracted to women, or only men. He loves both. It's not a phase for him. It's just who he is. And you're okay with that? I asked. She tilted her head. Okay with him being bi? Yeah, completely. Okay with him needing both kinds of connection in his life? Also, yeah. We talked about it for months before we ever got serious. We talked with therapists, read books, had messy late-night conversations. I'm not some saint with no jealousy or insecurity. I've had my moments, but the thing is, he was honest with me. From the start, I knew what partnership with him would look like. I realized I'd been holding my breath. I let it out slowly. So you're not hurt, angry? Not about this, she said. I might be mildly annoyed that he forgot to close the blinds again. We've had that conversation. She rolled her eyes affectionately. But no, I'm not hurt. You saw him loving someone else and thought it meant he couldn't love me. That's the story we've all been handed, right? One love at a time, or it doesn't count. I swirled the wine in my glass, watching the liquid catch the light. I feel stupid, I admitted, and I feel like I intruded on something that wasn't meant for me. You didn't intrude on purpose, she said. And you're not stupid. You care about me. That's what this was about. You saw something that scared you for my sake, and you wrestled with it for days, and then you called me instead of gossiping to someone else. That's, honestly, incredibly loyal. Something in my chest loosened. My eyes stung again. I was so mad at him, I confessed. Not just for what I thought he was doing to you, but for putting me in this position. I felt like I was carrying this giant secret that could blow everything up. Well, you're not carrying it alone anymore, she said. And it isn't a bomb. It's just our life. Not the standard one, maybe, but ours. We poured more wine. The conversation stretched on, moving from shock to curiosity as the night deepened. She told me stories I'd never heard, about the first time RJ came out to her, about his serious boyfriend in college, about the way he'd wrestled with feeling too much for a world that wanted simple labels. He thought he had to choose, she said at one point, staring at the candle between us. Pick a side. Be straight or be gay. And none of it fit. When we started talking about building a life together, he said, I can't promise I won't fall in love with a man again. I don't want to lie to you. And I said, okay, then let's not build a life that requires you to lie. I listened, soaking it in. My mental image of their relationship rearranged itself, shifting from a traditional romantic picture, with a crack down the middle, to something different. Not broken, just expanded. So, Daniel, I said carefully, does he just come over sometimes? Do you guys all hang out? She smiled. Yeah, we've gone on trips together. Game nights, movie marathons. Sometimes it's the three of us. Sometimes it's just me and Daniel grabbing coffee and gossiping about RJ when he's being dramatic. I laughed at that, the sound surprised and genuine. He lets you do that? Oh, he has no choice, she said. He chose two people who overthink everything and talk about their feelings constantly. That's on him. We talked until the candles burned low and the wine bottles were empty. At some point, our conversation drifted from RJ specifically to bigger ideas. How we're taught love has to look one way, how queerness gets flattened into stereotypes, how even as open-minded adults we don't always realize how many assumptions we're carrying around. I found myself admitting things I'd never really said out loud about my own dating life. How I'd stayed in relationships long past their expiration date because I was terrified of starting over. How I'd always felt like I was performing some version of good girlfriend I'd picked up from movies. You know what's funny? Maggie said, stretching her legs under the table. I used to feel sorry for people who had complicated relationships, like, poor them, all that work. And now I'm like, every relationship is complicated if it's honest. We just get to choose what kind of complicated we sign up for. I nodded, feeling something settle inside me. By the time I finally stood to leave, my head was pleasantly fuzzy from the wine, but my heart felt oddly clear, lighter. Maggie walked me to the door and pulled me into another hug. Thank you for telling me, she said into my hair. Really, even though you didn't have all the context, even though it scared you, you came to me. That means a lot. I'm just glad I didn't start some dramatic confrontation at the office, I admitted. I almost cornered him in the conference room yesterday. She pulled back, eyes wide. Oh God, that would have been a disaster. He would have tried to explain, panicked, overcomplicated everything, and then we'd have needed 3 more bottles of wine to untangle it. We both laughed, the last of the tension finally draining away. As I drove home that night, the city lights blurred gently at the edges, and everything felt different than it had that morning. I'd gone into this day thinking my best friend's marriage might be a lie. Instead, I'd found out it was just more complex, more intentional, more honest than I'd realized. I kept thinking about RJ on the balcony, the way he'd held Daniel with such open tenderness. I thought about the way he looked at Maggie across a crowded room at parties, the easy affection they shared. It didn't cancel out. It layered. The next time I saw RJ at work, he lingered by my desk a little longer than usual. Hey, he said quietly, once the others had drifted away. Mag talked to me last night. My stomach fluttered, but I nodded. Okay. She told me what you saw, he said. His eyes were soft, not defensive. I'm sorry you had to find out like that, and that you carried it around for days. I know that couldn't have been easy. I exhaled slowly. I thought you were cheating on her, I said simply. I know, he said. And I get why. If I'd thought for 1 second you knew everything and were upset about it, I'd have talked to you sooner. We honestly just didn't think about how it might look from the outside. It's okay, I said. Then, after a beat, I'm glad she told me. I feel like I actually know you both better now. He smiled. That same soft, unguarded expression I'd seen on the balcony, now directed at me. Good, he said. Because you're part of this weird little constellation too, you know. You're family. We want you to know us. The real us. As he walked back to his office, I felt this unusual, almost giddy warmth in my chest. Not because everything was neat and simple now. It wasn't. I still had questions, still had to retrain my brain away from certain assumptions. But my world had gotten a little bigger. That's the thing no one tells you about moments like this. The ones that feel at first like disasters waiting to happen. Sometimes they're actually doorways. Sometimes you walk through them and discover that the people you love are even more themselves than you realized. and that they trust you enough to show you. My friendship with Maggie didn't just survive that week, it deepened. We talked more openly after that, about everything from her fears to my secret crushes. My relationship with RJ shifted too. Not just boss and employee, not just my best friend's husband, but a man I now understood more fully, whose history made sense of the warmth and complexity I'd always sensed in him. And Daniel? I met him officially a couple of weeks later at a small dinner at their place. He brought dessert and a nervous smile, and the exact scar on his chin Maggie had mentioned. He hugged Maggie, kissed RJ, and shook my hand with this earnest, hopeful politeness. "Hey," he said, "I've heard a lot about you." "Same," I replied, and I meant it in a way I couldn't have imagined before that Thursday in the office. We played board games and teased RJ when he got too competitive. At one point, I caught the three of them laughing together, lit by the warm glow of the kitchen lights, and realized I didn't feel like an outsider looking in anymore. I felt like someone who'd been let in on the truth, and trusted to hold it. I'd gone from flabbergasted and horrified, standing frozen in an office with a stack of papers in my hand, to sitting at a kitchen table with 2 empty wine bottles, and a friend who trusted me with the most intimate parts of her life. And yeah, for a few days, it was hell. It was anxious and messy and confusing. But now I'm just grateful. Grateful I saw what I saw. Grateful I chose to call Maggie instead of stewing in silence or cornering RJ at work. Grateful they let me into their reality instead of leaving me outside with my assumptions. I know my friends more deeply now. I know their love story in its actual shape, not just the version that fits on a greeting card. And I feel ridiculously lucky to be someone they're willing to be honest with, even when honesty is complicated. If there's one thing I took away from all of it, it's this. Sometimes the things that shock you the most are the things that teach you how big love can really be. And I'm so glad I didn't let my fear speak before my friends did. Because the truth, as it turns out, didn't break anything. It just brought us closer.